What happens when one of comedy's greatest legends walks into what's supposed to be a light-hearted late-night chat and instead finds himself under fire? What began as routine celebrity banter quickly unraveled into something far more personal, more raw. This wasn't a roast. It wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a slow, public dismantling of mutual respect, and by the end, one of these giants would be gone from the stage, leaving a stunned audience wondering what they'd just witnessed. But before we break it down, hit subscribe and tell me in the comments which late-night host do you think handles controversy best. The night it all went sideways, it started like any other taping of The Late Show with Stephen Colbert. The crowd was buzzing. The cameras were rolling. Eddie Murphy was the headline guest, promoting his latest project, and expectations were high. For a nostalgic, feel-good interview, the opening monologue landed. The mood was light, but the second Murphy stepped onto the stage, something shifted. His smile was tight. Colbert's usual warmth felt sharper, polished, but with an edge. "Murphy, everybody," Colbert beamed. The applause was thunderous. Murphy sat. He smiled, but the air between the two men tense. "I've got to say," Colbert began, "watching your career unfold has been quite a journey. From the raw, unfiltered stand-up days to, well, let's say more family-friendly content. That's quite the evolution, huh?" The way he lingered on the word evolution made it sound less like praise and more like a challenge. Murphy didn't flinch, not exactly, but his smile slipped just for a second. "Well, Stephen," he said evenly, "I think any real artist grows over time. You stay stagnant, you fade. I've always tried to connect with audiences, whether that's through something edgy or something for everyone." Colbert nodded, but not in agreement. It was the kind of nod you give when you're waiting to pounce. "But some might say," he said slowly, "that what you call growth is really just playing it safe. I mean, when's the last time you really took a risk the way you used to?" The crowd quieted. This wasn't banter. It was a challenge. Murphy's posture shifted. Not aggressive, just alert. "I take risks all the time," he said, with a calm that had bite. "They just don't always look like they did when I was 25. Maturity changes what you're willing to put on the line." Colbert leaned back, a smirk playing at his lips. "Maturity," he repeated. "Is that what we're calling it? Because from where I sit, it kind of looks like you've spent the last 2 decades distancing yourself from what made you iconic. The fire, the honesty, the guts." Murphy's jaw tensed. "I'm not sure what you're implying." "What I'm implying," Colbert continued, "is that this sanitized version of Eddie Murphy, the talking animals, the fat suits, it feels like watching a lion with no teeth. You used to shake up the world. Now you sell tickets." There was a hush. A long, heavy hush. Murphy leaned in, voice low but firm. "You think courage is just saying outrageous things on stage? Try building a career that spans generations. Try creating space for others. Try taking care of your name, your legacy, your people. That's what real risk looks like." Colbert didn't blink. "There's that word again, evolve," he said. "But evolving means getting better. What you've done, it looks a lot more like retreat. From edgy to safe. From truth to commercial." The word commercial hit like an insult, thick and loaded. Murphy's fingers tightened around the armrests. He could have walked out right then, but he didn't single quotes T. Instead, he turned the tables. "You want to talk about commercial?" Murphy shot back. "Let's talk about this show, this desk, this monologue, the interview format that's been recycled since the 60s. Where's your evolution, Stephen?" The audience stirred. "You're basically doing Johnny Carson with more smug," Murphy added, except Carson had the decency to be charming. Gasps audible. Colbert's smile vanished. What replaced it was something cold, icy, and that's where the story really begins. Who's made the same movie 15 times in different costumes? Colbert jabbed. "At least my movies make people laugh," Murphy shot back without missing a beat. "Your show mostly just makes people feel superior to whoever you're mocking." That night, there's a difference between comedy and condescension, though I can see how you might get them confused. The tension in the studio was no longer just felt, it was visible. Some in the crowd shifted awkwardly. Others sat frozen, unsure if they should laugh, gasp, or just brace for what was coming next. "Celebrity interview," and was now a spiraling confrontation. Colbert's tone suddenly dropped. "You know what, Eddie?" he said, voice low and cutting. "I think what really bothers you is that someone's finally saying what this industry has whispered for years, that Eddie Murphy wants comedy royalty settled. You stopped being the king. Now, you're just the court jester." Murphy's eyes narrowed, the heat rising behind his calm. "And I think what really bothers you, Stephen," he said. He leaned forward now, voice sharp but steady. "You can hide behind your writers, your research team, your teleprompter. But when the lights go off, you're just another name behind a desk. Me, I'm Eddie Murphy," he said his name, with a quiet finality. No bravado, just truth, and it burned. Colbert's jaw tightened. His next line was colder than before. "You were Eddie Murphy," he said. Murphy stood. The studio fell into absolute silence. The cameras kept rolling, capturing what was no longer a performance, but a moment, raw, real, and about to combust. The audience held its breath, elbows on his knees, eyes locked with Colbert's. "You know what, Stephen? I was going to let that slide. But no, let's have a real conversation." The room was dead silent. "You want to talk about my best days?" Long Island, who walked into Saturday Night Live and didn't just get laughs, he changed comedy. "Let's talk about characters people still quote 40 years later. Mr. Robinson's Neighborhood, Buckwheat, Gumby. Parodies so sharp they made the real Mr. Rogers laugh." Colbert tried to cut in, but Murphy wasn't done, not even close. "Let's talk about Raw and Delirious. I redrew the map of what stand-up could be for black comics, for every comic." He leaned back now, letting the weight of it hang. On courage, Colbert opened his mouth, but the conviction in Murphy's voice steamrolled right through him. "That's your excuse. Society's evolved." "No," Murphy said with a humorless chuckle. "Society's gotten scared. Comedy's gotten timid. And shows like yours are part of the reason." He gestured toward the set. "You sit behind this desk every night, taking safe swings at safe targets. You mock politicians half your audience already hates, serve up applause lines for a crowd that already agrees with you. That's not bravery. That's repetition with a smug grin. This wasn't late-night TV anymore. You want to know why I did those family movies?" he asked. "Because I had something to prove, something you will never understand." He paused, just long enough to let the next. "I had to prove I could make white kids in suburban malls laugh just as hard as black kids in Harlem. I had to show I was more than just the angry black guy white folks felt comfortable laughing at." He stared straight into Colbert's eyes, every word like a hammer hitting steel. "I wasn't coasting. I was building a legacy, a bridge, a future." And just like that, the room changed. No more punchlines, no more banter. Just truth, and one man unafraid to speak it. "I was contained on a stage," Murphy said, voice edged with frustration, as Colbert's face reddened by the second. "So you're saying your artistic choices were driven by race?" Colbert prodded. "I'm saying my choices were driven by reality." Murphy snapped back without hesitation. "Something you've clearly never had to deal with." He leaned in. "You think I wanted to wear fat suits and play 5 characters in one scene? That was my big artistic vision? No, that was me proving I could vanish into roles so completely people forgot they were even watching Eddie Murphy. That was range. That was me playing every part because nobody else was going to let us through the door. But at what cost?" Colbert pushed, unable to help himself. "You went from being this bold, raw voice to a calculated entertainer." Murphy let out a short, bitter laugh. "Authentic? You want to talk about authentic?" His voice dropped, sharp and low. "What's authentic about you, Stephen? What's authentic about this whole setup? The thoughtful host? The tough questions? You're playing a character just like I was. The difference is, I never pretended it wasn't a performance." Colbert tried to interject, but Murphy wasn't finished. "We both know what this is," he continued. "You're not trying to have a conversation. You're trying to take down the guy who came before you, the guy whose legacy makes your place in this industry feel smaller." "That's ridiculous," Colbert muttered, but the denial didn't land. It sounded hollow. "Defensive, is it?" Murphy asked. "Because, from here, it looks like your whole career's been about being the smartest guy in the room. The one with the smug, smirk, and the fact checks, and the punchlines that make your audience feel superior." He leaned back, eyes locked, with Colbert's. And maybe that works when you've got senators or novelists on here. But I've been in this game longer than you've been out of college. I can smell insecurity like smoke. The cameras caught everything. The flickers of rage, the flickers of fear. Producers in the booth were likely panicking, but no one dared cut away. You know what your real problem is, Eddie? Colbert fired back. Cold now. You can't. Except that comedy moved on without you. The Eddie Murphy style. The shock. The vulgarity. The stereotypes. That's not what people want anymore. They want something smarter, more socially conscious. Murphy's eyebrow lifted. His voice rose, more socially conscious. He scoffed, the words slicing through the air. You mean more sanitized? More safe? Comedy pre-approved by marketing departments and scared executives. He stepped closer now, voice intensifying. Your comedy, Stephen, is for people afraid to laugh in case someone judges them. Mine was honest, messy, real. Colbert snapped back. At least my comedy doesn't rely on outdated stereotypes and offensive caricatures. The air left the room. Murphy stood slowly and walked around the desk, the distance between them shrinking. Colbert tensed visibly. Outdated stereotypes. Murphy's voice was quiet now, dangerous. Let's talk about your stereotypes, Stephen. How about the condescending white liberal who thinks he's more enlightened than everyone else? The one who talks down to people like he's teaching a class they didn't ask to be in. I never claimed, Colbert began. No, Murphy cut him off. You just act like your education, your upbringing, your privilege makes you more qualified to decide what's acceptable. Like your opinion is somehow more evolved than mine. Murphy turned back toward his chair, but didn't sit. He stood behind it, both hands gripping the backrest. You want to talk evolution? I evolved from a broke kid in Roosevelt to someone who created jobs for hundreds of people. I evolved from a novelty act into a cultural force. I proved that comedy could be global, profitable, powerful. And what did you evolve into, Stephen? He stared him down. You became the guy who tears down the people who kicked the door open for you to have a damn show in the first place. That's not what this is about, Colbert said, but his voice had lost its strength. Then what is it about? Murphy demanded. Because from where I'm standing, this looks like a man who can't stand the fact that someone else's legacy shines too bright next to his own. This looks like someone trying to shrink my story so he can feel bigger, and his Colbert gripped the desk now, knuckles white. The tension was unbearable. You could hear the weight of every word, and then the facade cracked. This is about accountability, Colbert finally snapped. His voice shook with something between anger and something deeper. This is about finally saying out loud what people have been too afraid to say. That your comedy hurt people. That it relied on stereotypes. That it set us back. That it marginalized communities who didn't have a platform to push back. And no one ever told you, because you were too powerful to challenge. Murphy's eyes darkened. Don't you dare try to turn. But the moment had changed. This wasn't comedy. This wasn't even confrontation. This was something bigger. And it wasn't over. Don't twist this into some kind of social justice crusade, Murphy growled, his voice like a fuse sizzling to the end. He leaned forward, every syllable landing. Like a punch. You know what really hurt people, Stephen? Poverty hurt people. Lack of opportunity hurt people. Being told they weren't good enough, smart enough, or welcome enough. That's what did the damage. Comedy didn't hurt them. It gave them a reason to laugh at the pain. That's a convenient excuse, Colbert fired back, voice rising. It's the same old defense that comedy exists in a vacuum. That it doesn't matter who gets hurt as long as someone's laughing. It kicked open doors. For other black performers, for people who had never seen someone like them at the center of a movie poster, I didn't just make people laugh. I changed the stakes. I proved we could carry a billion-dollar industry on our backs. And what about the other consequences? Colbert pressed, eyes narrowing. What about the stereotypes that stuck? The kids who internalized those punchlines. The communities reduced to punchlines for mainstream applause. Murphy slammed his hand down on the desk, hard. The entire studio jolted. The audience froze. Don't you dare lecture me about my community, he said, his voice thunderous. Don't you dare pretend you understand the impact of my work better than I do. I came from it. I lived it. Those jokes? They were about us. They were ours. You think your analysis is more valid than my lived reality? The studio was silent, breathless, as if no one dared move. "I'm not saying I understand everything," Colbert replied, softer now, but still defensive. "I'm saying that impact matters more than intent. And the impact of some of that material, it hurt people whether you meant it to or not. Impact over intent. That's the kind of thinking that's killing comedy. That's the kind of logic that judges every joke by how it might offend the most fragile person in the room. That's how you get comedy so watered down it doesn't say anything. Maybe that's better than comedy that punches down," Colbert snapped. "That gets laughs at the expense of the powerless." Murphy's voice exploded, punching down. "I was a broke kid from Long Island, cracking jokes about the absurd world trying to shut me out. I was speaking to my people, from within my community. You think that's punching down? The only person swinging downward here is you, from your fancy desk. Using your platform to dissect my life's work with a rulebook that didn't exist when I was building the damn ladder." Colbert stood now, meeting Murphy's energy. "You think it's courageous to play it safe? 2. Only take the risks you've already focus tested on Twitter. Real courage is standing on stage with nothing but a mic and your truth, not knowing. If the crowd will boo or walk out, and saying it anyway." "Oh, your truth," Colbert shot back, sarcastic. "But what if your truth came at the cost of someone else's voice? What if your platform drowned out people who never got the mic? Nobody said, 'Here, Eddie, take this career. I earned every second, every laugh, every seat filled. And now, because it doesn't fit your vision of acceptable progress, you want to rewrite it like it was shameful.' I want to hold it accountable," Colbert countered, "because success without responsibility is just selfishness." Murphy stared at him for a long beat, and when he spoke again, his voice was low, but sharp as a knife. "So what? Stephen, I've been in this business 40 years. I've had critics, haters, people who never wanted me in the room. But I've never met someone quite like you." He stepped back from the desk. "This isn't about me," Colbert muttered. "Everything is about you," Murphy exploded. "This whole interview, your moral grandstanding, your smug superiority, your performance of intellect and virtue, you didn't invite me here to celebrate my work or even challenge it in good faith. You brought me here to play the villain in your redemption arc." Murphy turned toward the edge of the stage, then paused, facing Colbert one last time. "You want to know the difference between us, Stephen?" His voice was steady now, cold. "I made people laugh when they needed it most. I gave them permission to find joy in their pain. I showed them that the struggle could still have humor, that the weight didn't have to crush them." He narrowed his eyes. You make people feel smarter than the people you're mocking. You make them feel superior, you give them permission to laugh downward, from a safe distance." Colbert's face was flushed, his jaw tight. The crowd didn't move. The producers didn't cut. Because they couldn't. No one could look away. "If you can't handle being challenged on your material," Colbert snapped, "maybe you shouldn't be doing interviews." Murphy let out a short, disbelieving laugh, shaking his head. "Challenged," he repeated. "This wasn't a challenge. Stephen, this was an ambush. This was you turning your stage into a courtroom, and me into a defendant in trial for the crime of succeeding in a way you don't approve of." His voice dropped, steely now. "And here's the thing, I don't have to sit here and take it." Murphy stood, pushing back from his chair with deliberate calm. He began walking toward the exit, every step measured. But Colbert couldn't resist one last dig. "Walk away, Eddie. That's what you've been doing for years, walking away from anything that might actually challenge you to grow." Murphy stopped, dead still. He didn't turn around, but his voice cut through the air like a blade. "No, Stephen. What I've been doing is walking toward something, building something, creating something that will still matter long after we're both gone." He paused. "You'll spend the rest of your career trying to look clever while tearing down the work of people who came before you. I spent mine building something that people still love, still need, and no matter how hard you try, you can't tear that down." And with that, Eddie Murphy walked off the stage. Colbert sat frozen behind his desk, blinking into the studio. Lights, while the audience sat in stunned silence, unsure whether to applaud or simply sit there, holding their breath. The cameras kept rolling for a few more seconds, long enough to capture Colbert's expression as it shifted realization, setting in about what had just unraveled in front of millions. Then finally, the cut to commercial. To be a routine interview to promote a film had transformed into something entirely different, a cultural flashpoint, a career-defining clash, and a televised reckoning over the past, present, and future of comedy. It was no longer just a late-night segment. It was a line in the sand about what comedy is, who it's for, and who gets to shape its rules. And judging by the silence in that studio, only one man walked away from that confrontation with his dignity not just intact, but elevated. What did you think of this unforgettable moment? Have you ever seen a late-night interview derail this hard? Which moment hit the hardest for you? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more raw, unfiltered stories from behind Hollywood's polished curtain, where the masks fall and the truth takes the mic.